Hey everyone! Tonight we're diving into a mystery you face every single day, literally, in the mirror. A feature that connects you to every human who's ever lived and sets you apart from every other animal on the planet. Picture this. We're standing on the wide golden plains of the Serengeti 3 million years ago. The sun beats down, the tall grass sways, and predators with knife-like teeth rule the land. But in the distance, a small family moves carefully through the brush. They're our ancestors, Australopithecus afarensis. Look closely at their faces. You'll recognize something: eyes, a nose, a mouth. Familiar, yet strangely different. Something's missing. Over the next 3 million years, their descendants will learn to master fire, shape stone into tools, and hunt mammoths across frozen plains. Their brains will triple in size, their minds will create language, art, and the foundations of civilization itself. But somewhere along that vast journey, a small, seemingly meaningless detail appeared, a tiny ledge of bone. Why did it evolve? What purpose did it serve that made it worth keeping forever? Tonight, with the help of ancient fossils and modern biomechanics, we're going to trace the story of that little bone and find out why humans, and only humans, have chins. If you've ever looked through the fossil record, you'll notice one thing. Our ancestors were painfully chinless. Compared to them, any Hollywood villain would look like their jawline was carved from marble. Before we get started, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of deep dive storytelling. That one click tells the algorithm that real, thoughtful educational content still matters, and to me, it means the world. I always love seeing where you're all watching from. Drop a comment telling me your city and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's settle in together. As you relax, notice that small shelf of bone on your own face, your chin. It's something shared by every human who's ever lived. Kings, farmers, poets, every person you've ever met, and all those who came before. Yet oddly enough, no other animal on Earth has one. It's not our big brain, or our opposable thumbs. It's that subtle, stubborn bump at the base of your jaw. To understand how strange this really is, we have to rewind to the 1700s. A Swedish botanist named Carl Linnaeus was busy organizing the natural world, classifying every species he could find. He described the features of bears and eagles in great detail. But when he reached our species, Homo sapiens, he did something unexpected. Instead of listing physical traits, he simply wrote 2 Latin words: Nosce te ipsum, know thyself. That, as it turns out, is a lot harder than it sounds. Ever since Linnaeus left that blank space, scientists have been trying to fill it, searching for the one trait that truly defines us. For a while we thought we had the answer. We were man the toolmaker, the only species clever enough to craft tools. Then, in the 1960s, Jane Goodall shattered that illusion when she saw chimpanzees using twigs to fish termites from their mounds. Next, we decided we were man the hunter, masters of teamwork and coordination. But then came orcas and wolves, hunting with precision and strategy that rival our own. So maybe it was our brains, our enormous, powerful brains. But even that isn't the full story. Neanderthals, our close cousins, actually had slightly larger brains than we do. Over centuries, we've been quietly stripping away every claim of human uniqueness. And yet, one tiny feature remains: the chin. It's the last anatomical trait we can call exclusively ours. And that raises a deceptively simple question. If it's so uniquely human, why does it exist? Does it serve a purpose? Or is it just an evolutionary accident? A leftover piece of some ancient biological experiment? Whatever the reason, it's strange that something so familiar even needs a definition. You've seen a chin your whole life, but in anthropology, where a single bone fragment might represent an entire species. Precision is everything. So when scientists talk about the chin, they don't mean a random bump. They're describing a carefully engineered piece of facial architecture, as deliberate as the curve of a cathedral arch. Its formal name is the mental eminence, or mental protuberance. Mental here doesn't mean mind. It comes from the Latin mentum, meaning chin. A small linguistic reminder of how ancient and intricate anatomy really is. To truly understand it, you have to see it as a configuration, a shape anthropologists describe as an inverted T. You can feel it on your own face right now. Put your finger at the center of your chin. That faint vertical ridge running down your jaw is the first part of the structure. It's what remains of the mental symphysis, the seam where the two halves of your lower jaw fused together when you were an infant. Now move your finger downward until you reach the hard horizontal ledge at the base. That's the bottom of the T, the part that juts out. Then notice the two small hollows on either side of that ridge, just above the ledge. Those are called the mental fossae. Together, the ridge, the bar, and those shallow dimples form the unmistakable signature of a true human chin. And what's truly incredible is that this feature doesn't suddenly appear when you hit puberty. It's there from the very beginning. Detailed studies of embryonic and fetal development show that the basic chin structure is already present before we're even born. While the jaw of a tiny human fetus is still forming, it's already following a unique blueprint, a genetic program unlike any other creatures on Earth. Developmental biologists still debate exactly which genetic switches trigger the lower jaw to push forward, forming that distinct projection we call the chin. It's a deeply ingrained instruction, an ancient line of code in the manual for how to build a human face. To really appreciate how strange this little forward jut of bone is, you first have to understand what everyone else has instead. Look at the jaw of nearly any mammal, a mouse, a lion, even a chimpanzee, and you'll notice the opposite pattern. Their jaws don't jut forward, they slope backward from the base of the teeth in what scientists call a receding symphysis. Imagine the jaw in profile. In humans, it drops down from the teeth, then angles forward into a point, bold, geometric, assertive. A chimpanzee's jaw, by contrast, just falls away. It curves gently back and under, a smooth retreating slope. No ledge, no shelf, no T-shaped brace. Just less. This isn't a small variation, it's a completely different design philosophy. And as scientists began uncovering the fossils of our ancient relatives, that difference, chin or no chin, became one of the sharpest dividing lines between us and them. Now, to really understand how lonely your chin is, imagine taking a walk through a museum archive. Rows of quiet shelves filled with ancient skulls, the faint dry scent of dust and bone hanging in the air. A curator sets two skulls on the table. One is human, instantly recognizable. The other belongs to our closest living relative, the chimpanzee. At first, they seem similar. The eye sockets, the nasal cavity, the overall shape. But then your eyes fall to the jawline. The human skull shows that unmistakable forward-jutting ridge, the mental eminence. It's confident, distinct, almost defiant. The chimpanzee skull, by contrast, simply stops. The jaw slopes backward, tucked neatly under the teeth in that same receding symphysis. It's not a small detail you'd need a specialist to notice. It's an obvious architectural void. One skull has a foundation, a prow that pushes forward. The other retreats. Now swap out the chimpanzee skull for one that hits closer to home, a Neanderthal. Discovered in the 1800s, Neanderthals were long seen as brutish, hunched cavemen, but modern science has rewritten that image. They buried their dead. They probably spoke in some form of language, and their brains were, on average, slightly larger than ours. They weren't monsters. They were people. our contemporaries, another kind of human sharing this planet with us. And yet, when you study their jaw, the same truth appears. No chin. A receding lower face, the same backward slope. They were so much like us, but they lacked this one subtle feature, this small architectural flourish that marks our lineage. It's a crucial clue. Paleoanthropologists still debate exactly how and when our ancestors diverged from Neanderthals, but the chin remains a clear physical boundary between the two branches. It's like comparing two nearly identical car models, except one has a small spoiler on the back. Somewhere along the line, the designs split. That pattern becomes even more striking as you travel further back through time, go back 3.5 million years, to meet one of the most famous fossils ever discovered, Lucy, a member of Australopithecus afarensis. Her face was a fascinating blend of ape and human traits, but her jaw tells a clear story. There's no sign of projection, no hint of that forward push. Her lower face slopes back, classic and practical, a powerful jaw designed for grinding tough, fibrous plants. For millions of years, that was the standard design. A face built purely for function, without the strange little ornament we carry today. And that wasn't just true of our oldest, most primitive ancestors. Fast forward to a more recent relative, the globe-trotting Homo erectus. These were the true pioneers of the human story, the first to walk fully upright with a modern stride, the first to control fire, the first to leave Africa and explore the wider world. They were smart, adaptable, and enduring, surviving nearly 2 million years, far longer than we have existed so far. A curious piece of history. One of the most famous Homo erectus fossils, known as Peking man, was discovered in China in the 1920s. But the original bones mysteriously vanished during World War II, leaving behind only detailed plaster casts made before the war. And when you study those casts, look closely at that ancient jaw, you'll notice the same thing. No chin. Despite their intelligence and innovation, their faces still followed the old blueprint. Chinless, practical, powerful. The fossil record made something undeniable. The chin didn't evolve gradually over millions of years. It appeared suddenly, exclusively, and recently, a signature trait that belonged only to us. For a long time, scientists believed it must have developed after our species had already emerged. But a discovery made in the heat and dust of East Africa would upend that idea and push the origin of this feature much further back. Now imagine yourself in the Omo River Valley of southern Ethiopia. It's 1967. You're part of a young team led by Richard Leakey, ambitious, determined, and following in the footsteps of his legendary parents, Louis and Mary Leakey. The landscape is harsh and unrelenting, blistering sun, endless dust, and ancient riverbeds layered with secrets millions of years old. Fossil hunting is slow, patient work. You spend your days scanning the ground for the faint glint of ancient bone among ordinary stones. Most days, you find nothing. But then, someone spots something. A fragment eroding out of a hillside. Not a full skeleton, just pieces. A bit of cranium, a few vertebrae, some limb bones. The discovery is catalogued as Omo 1, and among those scattered remains lies one piece that matters more than all the rest for this story. The mandible, the lower jaw. As you brush away the dust, it appears. Ancient, mineral-stained, shaped by time, and unmistakably modern. The jaw doesn't slope backward. It doesn't retreat. It has a clear, distinct, modern-looking chin. It looks like it could belong to someone you might pass on the street today. At first, based on the dating technology of the 1960s, scientists believed Omo 1 was about 130,000 years old. Impressively ancient, but still relatively recent in the grand story of evolution. Here's the thing about paleontology, though. A fossil story is never really over. Decades later, new dating techniques gave Homo one another turn in the spotlight. Using a method called argon-argon dating on volcanic ash layers surrounding the fossil, scientists recalculated its age. The results were stunning. Homo 1 wasn't 130,000 years old. It was closer to 230,000. That changed everything. It proved the human chin wasn't some late-stage evolutionary afterthought. It was there from the beginning, one of our species' original design features. Finding a chin on a fossil that ancient is like spotting a smartphone in a black and white photo from the 1920s, so modern-looking it forces you to rethink the entire timeline. And while researchers still debate exactly where our species first emerged, with strong evidence from places like Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, suggesting humans may go back as far as 300,000 years, the Homo 1 fossil provides a firm anchor point. For at least 250,000 years, every ancestor who looked in still water or a polished stone saw that same subtle ledge of bone beneath their lips. The chin was part of the original package, not an upgrade. It's been there from day one, and that makes its mystery, why we have it at all, even more compelling. Because to truly uncover the origin of your chin, you have to do something counterintuitive. You have to forget about your head entirely. This story doesn't start with your jaw, or your mouth, or even your brain. It starts with your feet. To find the real beginning, we have to rewind not just a few 100,000 years, but 6 or 7 million, back to a time when dense forests stretched across Africa. And there, among the trees, a group of apes was about to make the most important decision in the history of life on Earth. In a world ruled by knuckles and claws, something extraordinary is about to happen. They're going to stand up. That moment, when our ancestors rose onto 2 legs, is the spark that ignites all of human history. It's the first domino in a chain reaction that, millions of years later, would shape even the smallest details of your body, like that tiny shelf of bone beneath your eyes. But standing upright wasn't some simple upgrade. It was a complete re-engineering of the body. The old design was perfect for climbing trees and walking on all fours, a masterpiece of its own kind. To adapt that blueprint for upright walking meant tearing the whole system apart and building it again from scratch. The spine, once an arched bridge supporting the torso from above, had to bend into an S-shaped spring to absorb the shock of each step. The pelvis, long and narrow like a suspension beam, had to become a short, wide bowl to hold up the organs now pressing straight down. The thigh bones angled inward so the knees and feet stayed aligned beneath the body's center of gravity, keeping us from waddling like ducks. These weren't tweaks, they were architectural revolutions. And the most elegant proof of this transformation sits in an unexpected place, the base of the skull. There, a small opening called the foramen magnum, Latin for great hole, marks where the spinal cord enters the brain. In chimps and other 4-legged animals, it's positioned toward the back, since their spine meets the head from behind. But that means they need heavy neck muscles just to keep their heads up and facing forward. Now look at a human skull. The foramen magnum sits almost directly underneath, perfectly balanced, so the head rests easily atop the spine. It's a subtle but powerful sign that the creature it belonged to walked upright. This repositioning was the smoking gun of bipedalism, but balancing the head on top of the spine created a ripple effect, a cascade of design challenges that would reshape the skull itself. The head was no longer pitched forward, it was now perched high like a penthouse suite, and that new position would influence everything that came next. The question, of course, is why stand up at all? It's risky business. You become slower, less stable, and you expose your soft underside to predators. Scientists have argued for decades about the real reason. The classic savanna hypothesis imagines shrinking forests and spreading grasslands, forcing our ancestors to stand tall to see over the grass, to spot predators or find food. Another idea says freeing the hands was the key. to carry food, tools, or infants. And then there's the thermoregulation theory. Standing upright keeps less of your body under the scorching sun and lifts you into cooler air currents. Whatever the reason, that first step changed everything. It set the human body and brain on a completely new evolutionary course. For millions of years after that, our ancestors walked the earth upright, but still carried ape-sized brains. Standing up was revolutionary, but it was only the prelude. The real transformation began about 2.5 million years ago, when a new figure entered the story. Homo habilis, the handy man. The setting, Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania. The world is drying out. Forests are fading, replaced by vast grasslands. And within that shifting landscape, we find the earliest members of our own genus, Homo. Look at their skulls, and you see the next great leap. The brain is growing. This is the beginning of encephalization, the brain boom that defines our lineage. But a big brain isn't cheap. It's one of nature's most energy-hungry organs. Right now, your brain makes up only about 2% of your body weight, yet it devours 20% of the calories you burn each day. In infants, that number can reach 60%. So how did our ancestors afford this new luxury? They had to solve an energy crisis. You can't just install a bigger engine without upgrading the fuel system. That's where the expensive tissue hypothesis comes in. The idea that energy in an animal's body is finite. To afford a bigger brain, something else had to shrink. And in our case, that something was the gut. A gorilla's long, complex digestive system ferments tough plant matter, but it's metabolically costly. When early humans started eating richer, more easily digested foods, like meat and bone marrow, they could get the same energy with less effort. A shorter, simpler gut meant spare fuel for a growing brain. You can see this shift written in bone. The skulls of Homo habilis begin to swell upward and outward, taller, rounder, more dome-like than the flattened heads of their Australopithecus ancestors. As the brain ballooned, the face began to tuck beneath it, the start of a long, slow process that would eventually hide the snout beneath a towering forehead. Was it a bigger brain that enabled better hunting, or better hunting that fueled a bigger brain? Nobody knows for sure. It's an evolutionary chicken and egg problem. But what's clear is that once the cycle began, it fed itself. Bigger brains made better tools got better food, and better food fueled even bigger brains. We were caught in a powerful feedback loop, an evolutionary spiral pulling us upward. But this growth came with consequences. You can't just keep inflating a skull without affecting everything around it, and what sat directly in front of that expanding brain was the face. Picture two skulls on a museum table. The first, from an early ancestor like Australopithecus, has a large projecting face, a snout jutting ahead of a small brain case. Scientists call this prognathism. The second skull, from a modern human, looks entirely different. The face is flat, vertical, tucked neatly beneath the forehead. That's orthognathism. Human evolution, in many ways, is the story of that retreat, from a protruding face to a tucked one. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was structural necessity. Imagine the skull as an architectural project. The brain case is a balloon. The face is a box attached to the front. In early hominins, the balloon was small and the box large, but as the brain expanded, the balloon swelled upward, outward, and forward. The growing frontal lobes, the seat of reasoning and planning, pressed down on the facial bones, forcing them to rotate and fold underneath. In a strange twist of design, to make room for thought, the face had to step aside, and that was only possible because of another shift, the shrinking of our jaws and teeth. Thanks to tools and cooking, our diet softened. No more hours grinding raw plants or tearing into muscle. Over millions of years, our molars shrank, our canines dulled, and our jaws became smaller and more delicate. The old chewing machines that once filled our faces with bone and muscle were no longer needed. In their place, the skull evolved into a sleeker, lighter frame, one capable of housing the most complex organ on Earth. And all of it began the moment we stood up. The entire dental structure could begin to shrink. The delicate balance between a growing brain and a retreating jaw is still debated fiercely among paleoanthropologists. Some argue the brain's expansion pushed the face to flatten. Others believe the shrinking teeth and jaws pulled it inward. Either way, the result was the same. The face grew smaller while the brain grew larger. This vast, multi-million-year transformation, this grand reshaping of the human skull, ultimately sculpted the face you see in the mirror today, small, refined, and flat. It was nature's most ambitious renovation. In the old blueprint, the engine, the jaws and teeth, sat front and center, while the driver's cabin, the brain, was tucked behind. But evolution reversed the design. The driver's cabin was moved to a spacious penthouse suite with a panoramic view, while the downsized engine was tucked neatly beneath it. This final configuration, the flat-faced skull of Homo sapiens, became the stage for the next evolutionary mystery. On this newly remodeled face, shaped by bipedalism, brain expansion, and dietary change, something strange appeared for the first time: the human chin. The cast was set. The scene was ready. Now came the question: why did it appear at all? The shrinking face needed a catalyst, a force powerful enough to loosen the evolutionary grip that had kept hominin jaws massive for millions of years. And that force, according to one radical idea, wasn't climate, competition, or predators. It was fire, specifically the simple transformative act of cooking. The British primatologist Richard Wrangham spent years observing chimpanzees in the wild, documenting their exhausting daily routines. He saw them spend 4 to 6 hours every single day just chewing, grinding through tough, raw fruits and fibrous leaves. Eating was their full-time job. That observation led to a profound insight. If our closest relatives must work that hard just to eat, how did our ancestors, with their far larger brains to feed, ever manage it? Wrangham's answer became known as the cooking hypothesis, and it flipped the story of human evolution on its head. We didn't evolve bigger brains and then invent cooking. We discovered cooking first, and that allowed our brains to grow and our faces to shrink. At its core, his theory reframes cooking as a biological revolution, not a cultural one. A fire wasn't just warmth or light, it was an external digestive system. When you cook food, you're doing the stomach's hardest work before it even begins. Heat breaks down the rigid cellulose of plants and the collagen that toughens meat. It unravels proteins, turning complex molecular knots into simple chains that our enzymes can easily digest. A baked potato offers far more usable calories than a raw one. A cooked piece of meat requires a fraction of the effort to chew or digest compared to a raw steak. By outsourcing the heavy lifting of digestion to fire, our ancestors unlocked a massive surplus of time and energy. Pinpointing exactly when that happened is one of archaeology's greatest challenges. A million-year-old campfire leaves almost nothing behind, just faint ash, a few charred bones. And it's nearly impossible to tell whether a fire deep in a cave was lit by ancient hands or sparked by lightning. Still, evidence is accumulating. In South Africa's Wonderwerk cave, archaeologists have found traces of repeated, controlled fires deep within the cavern, dating back nearly 1 million years, right in the era of Homo erectus.